You're listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, episode number 51.
Welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hey, you, welcome back. I'm your host, Jill Castle, and the Nourished Child Podcast is a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of raising healthy ones, inside and out. We are talking today about easy breezy nutrition tweaks to boost athletic performance in teen athletes with Chris Rosenbloom. But before we get started, I want to say a word about our sponsor. This episode of the Nourished Child Podcast is brought to you by Eat Like a Champion, the sports nutrition course for young athletes. What a young athlete eats, when they eat, and how they fuel their body can be the secret sauce to their success. Yet so many young athletes don't know how to fuel for performance. My sports nutrition course changes all of that. When young athletes take this course, they learn the fundamentals of fueling with food, from the role of protein and carbs and where to find them in food, to the timing of eating for training and competition, and much more. I've helped many young athletes take their athletic performance to the next level by coaching them through the foundation of a performance diet. You can find out more at www.jillcastle.com/courses. I'm excited to have Chris on the show today. She's a woman I greatly admire and someone I've gotten to know over the years. Back in 2012, Chris asked me to help write a chapter on the child athlete for the online version of the Sports Nutrition Care Manual for dietitians. And at the time, I was writing a monthly article for USA Swimming, and Chris soon joined on as a contributor. We have a very similar approach to sports nutrition for young athletes. It's one that is evidence-based, but also very practical in our advice. And you'll see that today in this interview with Chris. Chris has recently co-authored and published a book called Food and Fitness After 50, which I totally need to read. So hang on to the end of the show, the end of the interview. We dish on what it means to be healthy and fit after age 50, because guess what? I am, and I'm very interested in this topic. So without further ado, let's talk with Chris. Here she is. Hey, Chris, welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast.
Thanks, Jill. I'm so glad to be talking to you today.
Yeah, I've shared your bio already, but it's always so much fun to hear my guests tell us a little bit about themselves in their own words. So why don't you, my listeners, know sort of what you're all about? Because you've got some exciting stuff going on. I know that.
Oh, well, thanks. Yes, like you, I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I was a nutrition professor for about 30 years. And in that time, I worked with the college athletes. So I have a lot of experience working with young athletes at the collegiate level. And then I also spend a lot of time with my 37 nieces and nephews who are all involved in sports, offering the advice that only an aunt can offer. And then I volunteer at our local rural high school in Hart County, Georgia. And for the past 3 years, I've been giving nutrition advice to teams and coaches and athletes there. So I've got that kind of practical experience, but then I also have some of the academic experience. I've been editor-in-chief of the Sports Nutrition Manual for the Sports Dietetics Practice Group of the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics for many editions of that. I do some work with the International Olympic Committee, and I've been writing for USA Swimming for about 5 years.
Yes, and that's how we really got to know each other.
It is.
Which has been a very fun way to get to know you and to work with you. So you do a ton with sports nutrition, and I think that it will be a really fun episode to talk about teen eating and what knowledge that you can impart for families, for parents, particularly on how to help their teen athletes fuel for performance. But before we get started, were you an athlete? And if you were or not, what was food and eating like for you growing up?
I was not an athlete. When I went to school, there weren't girl sports. The only thing you could do as a girl when I was in school was be a cheerleader or on the drill team. And I was none of those things. So I was not an athlete, but I always enjoyed sports. And I was the scorer for the baseball team through high school, and I was at every game. So I always liked sports, but I wasn't much of a participant. I started running when I started my first job in nutrition in cardiac rehab because the team physician wanted us to run and exercise with the patients. He thought that was the best way for us to get to know them and to sort of do our nutrition counseling on the run or walk. So that was my introduction to that. I did grow up one of 7 kids, so I had a very big family, and family mealtime was really important to us. And I think one of the things that I see that's really different in the world today is that we ate family meals together, and we ate what mom and dad put on the table. There was no short order cooking going on. And, I see so many kids who, I like to call it, they have limited palates. I always, when I work with high school kids and we do things at team meals, I always bring something for them to try. And I make them try it. And they're pretty good about it, even though they're teens and they may have never tasted roasted cauliflower. I make them try things. And the usual response I get is, not bad. It's not bad.
Right. Yes, it's an amazing thing, those taste buds, as they mature and grow up.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So speaking of maturity, teenagers have such a range of maturity, both, physical and emotional. And this certainly influences their response to the idea of using food as fuel from a cognitive and psychosocial angle, but also physically their ability to use food as fuel. So what should parents know about the teen athlete when it comes to food as fuel?
Well, I think it is so important. And one of the things that I try to tell parents when I'm talking to them is I like to think about nutrition as one leg of a 3-legged stool. The first leg is the child's natural God-given talent and abilities and their motivation to work. And then another leg could be their coaching or their parental support, their conditioning, their training. And then the third leg is what they fuel themselves with, their hydration, their feeding practices around their training, what they do to support their training and conditioning. And without that third leg, that stool just doesn't stand up very well. So I really try to impart to them that, they may think that they're doing okay with what they're eating. And a lot of the teens will say that to me, I'm pretty good, just as it is. And I always say, how much better could you be? How much less fatigue could you have in games? How longer could you go at the end of the season when that's the time you're in playoffs and championships? So, trying to get them to think about, what nutrition can do for them, not just what they're doing now, but how it can be that competitive edge and get them to the next level.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the 3-legged stool. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. So I just had a parent contact me this morning, in fact, concerned about her daughter's basketball team and the way that the girls on the team were eating. She did not feel that that was the proper way to fuel their bodies for competition, and it was sort of rampant on the team. And her question was, how do I talk about this without offending other parents or other kids on the team? And I thought that was a really good question because there is that sensitivity around bringing up those kind of topics, particularly when you're dealing with a team, because if you have a child on a team and there's a couple of kids who are great players, but they just aren't eating right, or they're almost being a bad influence on the entire team, how do you address that? What would your point of view be on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I would try to work with the coach because I think the coach is key, and most of the kids on the team really do look up to and listen to the coach. And so if I was that parent, I would probably try to talk to the coach in not a confrontational way, but maybe provide some information, things from your website, your podcast, or some information to say, hey, I've been reading about this from a credible source. It's not just something I Googled and it's on the internet. And, maybe this would be something that would be helpful for the whole team. One of the things that I try to do when I talk to teams is get them to set nutrition goals for the team. So just like they set goals for, we want to have so many wins this season. I try to get them to think, well, what could you do for nutrition goals? And then I also ask the coach, who are the team leaders? Who could we really work with to have them help us get that message across? And so for one of the teams I'm working with right now, their one nutrition goal is that they're going to eat before they get to practice. They have those early lunch periods in high school. A lot of them don't, eat much in the school cafeteria. And so then they show up to practice at 3:15 or 3:30, having gone a long time without fuel. So we talk about what are those things that you could have in your backpack or your gym bag that you could have before you get to practice. And so, then we check in with them is, okay, how many are meeting that goal? So I think working through the coach might be one good way to do it, to have them look at their team nutrition and a team goal.
I think that's great advice. And I love the idea of setting a nutrition goal for the whole team. I think that can be very motivating. Absolutely clearly sends the message that nutrition is important to the whole team. And that in and of itself, I think, is a wonderful way to introduce the topic.
Yeah, I think that works really well. One other thing a quote I start out every time I talk to kids in high schools, and it comes from Ron Maughan, who you probably know. He's a exercise physiologist and a nutritionist that works with the International Olympic Committee. But he says that good nutrition won't make an average athlete a great athlete, but poor nutrition can make a great athlete average. And I just love that because I always start to say, how many of you are great athletes? Of course, every hand in the room goes up. And, so I tell them, I said, you might be doing things that really are going to hurt your performance. So it's not just how it can make you better, but when you're not practicing good nutrition or you're showing up to practice having just scarfed down 4 fried chicken biscuits, you're not going to perform as well. So it can really make that great athlete into an average athlete if you're not really paying attention to what you're eating, when you're eating, and how much of it you're eating.
Yeah, that's a really great. I love that quote too. That's a wonderful quote. Teens do make the darndest mistakes though when they're athletes. So let's talk about what you see are the common mistakes teens making when it comes to fueling for performance.
Well, there are a couple. I think one is that some of them just want to take shortcuts. They think, well, if I just pump in tons of protein shakes, I'm going to put muscle on. And it doesn't work that way, as we all know. You've got to pull that protein in through your strength and conditioning workouts, and you have that protein timed around your workouts. So just sucking down protein shakes isn't going to help. I recently saw a young athlete who was only 11, and he really wanted to get big and strong. The problem is he hadn't gone through puberty yet, or he was just starting. So he didn't have the hormones. He didn't have the androgens to really help him put on that lean muscle. And all he was really doing was storing more body fat, which, it was not going to help him as an athlete. So I think that idea of there's a shortcut. Sometimes it does take a little time. You have to be physically mature in order to do that. So I think that shortcut idea. And the same thing with supplements. Some young athletes are seeing all these pictures of bodybuilders and all these ads for supplements or videos on YouTube. And so they think that they're shortcuts. So that's one. I would say another one is I'm seeing a lot of young girls be concerned about nutrition. Maybe for ethical reasons, they want to become vegetarians, or they're concerned about the environment, or they watch a documentary like Cowspiracy, and they think I should never eat meat again. And so they want to become plant-based eaters, which is great, but you have to be very careful to get the right nutrients when you do that. So This young girl, this was just last week, said to me, well, so I'm not eating, I'm not doing any dairy, and I'm using almond milk. So of course I told her that, well, that's nice, but almond milk doesn't have any protein. And I said, so, and where are you going to get, calcium? You're going to get some from that. Where are you getting calcium? She said, oh, I love broccoli. So I get my calcium from broccoli. So, I did a quick peek at the U.S. Nutrient Database and said, you have to have 62 cups of broccoli to get our data for calcium. And, she was like, oh, I think they think just eating a couple stalks of broccoli, oh, there's calcium, so they just they want to be healthy, but they don't always have the right tactics to get there with that. And then I think the other thing for teens is that they're teens, and I think they should take some responsibility for their own nutrition. I have a friend who has a daughter who's in crew, and she's in high school, and I just loved his approach with her. He said, this is something you want to do. Your mom and I will support you, but you have to be responsible for packing your gym bag at night and making sure your clothes are clean and making sure you have snacks. And we'll have stuff in the refrigerator in the pantry for you, but that's your responsibility. And I really liked that. Instead of, well, mom didn't wash my shorts, or dad didn't pack me a peanut butter sandwich. So
I do that with my own athletes. I have one swimmer in college, and she's a great eater, always has always been very balanced and very responsible about her eating. And then I have a rower who's in high school, and the same thing. I don't wash his unis. I don't do his laundry. I will pack his lunch and I will make his breakfast, but he does his snacks, and he does his nighttime snack and his after practice snack and his, and he can cook his own dinner. And I just think that is such an important, as a parent of athletes, it's such an important gift you can give your athletes if you teach them how to fuel and care for their bodies. Because we do invest so much time and energy and money into helping their performance and helping them be the best that they can be. But if we're falling down on the day-to-day responsibility of fueling and caring and cleaning and all of the things that are, help them become adults, then we're not really serving them well at all.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have a friend you probably know, Kathleen Zellman, and she said that when her son was in high school, she had him do an independent study she called Mom 101. And she said, when you're going off to college and being on your own, you need to learn to cook. And so he had to cook a meal for the family every week, which meant planning the meal, shopping, preparing, cleanup, just those things that so many kids today just don't have those skills, because as a college professor, I just saw so many young adults who had those helicopter parents. They just hovered over them and did everything for them, to the point of even picking out their classes. And so it's like, come on, they got to grow up sometime.
Yes. And how empowering to know how to fuel your body. I just think that for kids who are in sports and really taking it seriously and want to do their best, it's very empowering to know how to fuel your body and to be able to do it for yourself.
Yeah, and I really do think it can give the kid the edge. And I was just in Minneapolis yesterday talking to some high school coaches, and that's one of the things that came through loud and clear from the coaches is anything that can give them an edge. That they're all over the training and the conditioning and the strength workouts. But, a lot of them just forget about the nutrition piece, or they just think, oh, the kids are okay, they're going to eat. And they think that that's just such an important piece that's missing in a lot of teen athletes' diets. And whether it's from the teens themselves, the parents, the coaches, it's just sort of that environment of, well, the kids are so busy, let them just go run through the drive-through and pick up whatever they want. Or, they get home at 8 o'clock, so it's okay just for them to order a pepperoni pizza and eat the whole thing before they go to bed.
Yeah. Well, my observation has always been too, working with a lot of coaches, just with my own kids and professionally, I'm always saying the eating habits you establish in childhood and the teen years are the eating habits you will have as an adult. And so if you are snarfing down a pizza at 10 o'clock at night, you will be inclined to do that when you go to college and when you are a young adult who might not be playing sports anymore. And I think that is the big, I don't get too much into the whole calorie numbers and thing, but there's a huge calorie gap when you think about a young athlete who is practicing 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, and the calorie burn that they are creating, their metabolic rev, and then they transition into adulthood. They still have these eating habits, but they're lucky to get a 45-minute workout or a 45-minute run in, 4 or 5 days a week because they're working, and then they don't know how to reverse engineer their eating habits.
Yeah, it's so true. I used to see that all the time when I was working with athletes. Way back in my career when I first started working with Georgia Tech, we did a lot with the football team. And I would tell these guys, I told the athletic department, we need a deconditioning, a detraining program. So as they're transitioning, because a lot of these kids are not going to go to the NFL. I mean, a handful, but most of them are not. And, I would talk to the guys about this and they'd say, oh, I'm going to still work out. And it's like, no, you are not getting up at 6 o'clock and run stadium steps because your coach isn't making you. And then, 2 or 3 years later, I'd go to the game and here come, some linemen who had really packed on an additional 50 or 60 pounds from where they were. And it's all because of exactly what you said. Their eating habits have been established. It's hard for them to learn to cut back. And then that activity just plummets once they get out of organized sports.
So I see some of the similar common mistakes. Skipping meals, I see a lot amongst my teen athletes. They light load at lunch. A lot of girls will light load at lunch. and then not really have any kind of a substantial snack before they go to practice, or they're skipping breakfast. A lot of athletes are skipping breakfast. Protein overload, I see that a lot, particularly the boy athletes who are really looking to, as you said, take a shortcut and load up on protein, but then they don't have any carbs, so they have no energy. And they're like, why am I dying in the middle of practice?
Yeah. And I see that a lot. And then the other thing I tell them is that when they're having all that protein, that they can also get dehydrated. That I try to always emphasize the body's number one need is for energy. And if you're only eating protein, you're going to waste a lot of that protein and you're going to break it down for energy. Then some of that ends up getting in the kidneys and you got to flush out some of that. So it can be a double whammy. You can have lack of carbs for energy, and then you can also be getting a little dehydrated. And so I really try to hammer home that message, but it really is harder and harder to get that message when there's so many diet plans out there. The keto plan is becoming so popular now. And then I see a lot of this SECO, the calories in, calories out, and if it fits your macros. As, we need to come up with a cool acronym for just a regular old good diet, because that seems to be what they like. So let's work on that.
Yes, we should. We should put our heads together on that one. And just to back up to the keto diet, have you seen any recent evidence of this being studied in young athletes? I haven't. I'm just picking your brain to see if you've seen anything.
No, not in real young athletes. The group out of Australia continues to do some really good work with Olympic level athletes who are race walkers. They're on their third study now with the keto diet. And in both of the previous studies, they found that, yes, you can increase fat oxidation, but no, you don't improve your performance. As a matter of fact, performance suffers. And so they're very good studies, but they're mostly they're younger because they're Olympic level athletes, but they're not teens or anything like that. So, but I'm starting to see it more from parents who are hearing that this diet will prevent me from getting diabetes, it'll prevent Alzheimer's disease, and all these things. And then once the parents start doing it, then they think, well, this is something my child should do too.
Right. Yeah, it is a very interesting. We do need to have an acronym or something that's a little sexier to get the real true, solid core diet out for these growing kids and athletes. Yes. So if you had to have, if you had to list out some easy tweaks for teens to make to correct these common mistakes that we see and help them with their performance, what would be maybe your top 3 or 5, however many you want to go through?
Yeah. Well, I think the first is, like you said, eat breakfast. Once you have an overnight fast, the liver stores of glycogen can be really depleted. And so when these kids are showing up for early morning practice, they can, as they say in the South, fall out. So they can, pass out and they just don't feel well. So they just don't have enough fuel. So I think eating breakfast is good. And that can be that easy grab and go breakfast. And I always tell them that it doesn't have to be a lot, but, even if it's just 25 grams of carbohydrate, which is the amount in a 4.5-ounce carton of fruity yogurt or a medium apple or orange or a cup of low-fat chocolate milk, just something in the morning within that hour before practice can help them get through practice. So I think that's important. I also think it's important to remind them, because a lot of kids say to me, I'm not hungry in the morning and I'll feel sick if I eat. And if I eat breakfast, I'll be hungry by lunch. And, so I say, well, first of all, think of it like a prescription. It's just something you got to do. You just have to eat something. It doesn't have to be a lot. And do it during training. Train your gut, just like you train your muscles and you train your brain. And then the third thing, when they say, well, I'll be hungry by lunch, I say, you should be hungry by lunch. It's natural for us to be hungry. I think because, they hear so much about, hunger, they think they should never feel hunger. There's nothing wrong with feeling hunger. It's natural. It's your body, you're telling you need some fuel. So don't worry about feeling hungry. That's your body talking to you. I think that's one. Yeah.
Right. I've had many, and a lot of times teen athletes, they're eating late at night. They're studying 10, 11 o'clock at night. And of course, they're not hungry. They haven't had that big, long fast. They've had a little bit of a fast, but not long enough to really set their body in motion, set those hunger cues going. And the other thing that you said that I wanted to just mention, I interviewed Dan Walsh, who was an Olympic rower, on the podcast, and his whole thing was train your palate. So that's the other angle that he uses with his rowers when he's coaching is like, you don't like broccoli, you don't like asparagus, you don't like fruit. Well, you need to train your palate just like you're training your body to compete. You have to train your palate to eat the foods that are right for competition and for training.
Yeah, that's a great idea and that's one of the reasons I like to have samples of foods for kids to taste, because some of them just haven't tried those foods. So I think that's a really great strategy. Another thing, I think that, as they're putting together their schedule for the week, they know when they have to show up to practice or when they have study halls or, classes, think about breakfast. I mean, it's really not a hard thing to, hard boil up a few eggs on Sunday or Saturday and have them in the refrigerator ready to go. Have the yogurt ready to go. Have those things all ready so that you don't have to add a little more layer of stress in the morning. And, as much as I would like to say don't eat it in the car, if that's the only time you're going to eat breakfast, then go for it. Eat it in the car.
Yep. I just sent my son out the door with breakfast in the car today.
Sure. There's nothing wrong with that. I'd rather that they eat. And, I think that's the other thing that teen athletes are so busy. They're multiple sport athletes. Mm-hmm. A lot of them work part-time jobs. They're running all the time. So I think any of those grab and go kind of foods can be great as long as they're using them in the right way. I had a swimmer recently who was starting before practice and she ate 5 Cliff Bars right before a workout, and then she had a stomach ache. Well, they are not meant to be scarfed down, right before. I mean, look, I know. So I said, let's think about another alternative there. And I think that's what happens with a lot of young athletes. Yeah. By the time they're hungry, they're starving, so they just want to eat a whole lot, and they don't try to plan it out during the day and think a little bit more about the timing of when they should eat.
Exactly. I had this was not an athlete, but just the nausea in the morning issue came up with one of my clients who just refused to eat breakfast. And she was an athlete. She was required to participate in sports through her school, but she wouldn't eat anything for breakfast and wouldn't eat at lunch because she was at a new school and was uncomfortable and had medications that she was taking that suppressed her appetite. And she really did not want to eat anything in the morning. And I convinced her that, the stomach acid, that's the other angle about the nausea issue. It's like your stomach acids really build up overnight in an empty stomach, and food actually helps quell that nausea. And she was resistant, but tried it, and it really turned things around for her significantly.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I always try to tell them, start small. I'm not expecting you to sit down and eat, a 3-egg omelet. Just start small. A slice of toast with some peanut butter. Right. I love little mini bagels because they're 25 grams of carbohydrates, so they're small. Just something like that just to get something in the stomach and to help you get through that practice and workout. I think, a lot of the athletes, too, that I talk to, the ones that are serious, they do a lot of logging about, how they feel or how their training went or their strength, improvements. I said, think about the same thing with nutrition. Check in with yourself. Did you really feel better after you had this or that for breakfast? What works, what doesn't, so that you kind of know what's going to work for you in the future. And then when you get to those big competitions, it's already worked out. You don't have to think, my big meet's tomorrow. What am I going to do?
Right. That's such good advice. I love networking. I'm part of a podcast network called Parents on Demand, or the Pod Network. We are a network of fun and educational podcasts perfect for your family. You can explore the shows in the network by going to parentsondemand.com and searching specific categories. Parents on Demand also has a download for a free network app on iOS and Android, so you can listen to your favorite shows or find new podcasts. Subscribe through iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, or another provider. Every month, I will feature a podcast that I think will be helpful or of interest to you. Here's this month's podcast feature.
Fruits and veggies. We know we're supposed to eat them as parents, but getting our kids to eat them and try new things? Not so easy. Hi, my name's Corey, and welcome to Lean Green Dad Radio. I'm a husband, a father, and a plant-based athlete, and each week I get to talk to some of the most incredible folks I can find to help me stay fit, eat healthy, and really get the most out of life as a busy parent. Be sure to visit us online at leangreendad.com and keep going that extra mile for your family.
So there are lots of easy little tweaks that athletes and parents can help their athletes make. What do you have as a suggestion for protein? Because I know there are a lot of athletes out there, a lot of parents out there that are going to be listening to the show and think, gosh, my teenager is just going hog wild with protein or not getting enough. What is sort of how would you paint the picture of how an athlete should eat protein throughout their day?
Well, I like to think about it as, spreading the protein out. I think that's really one of the most important things, so that there should be some good quality protein at breakfast. And that's where, I'm a big fan of dairy foods, because not only do they have that good quality protein, but they also have the other nutrients that teens need. They've got it's got the carbohydrate, it's got the fat, and it's got the vitamins and the minerals. So it's a really handy package. And the other thing I found is a lot of kids say, I don't want milk. That's so boring. I want, whey protein powder. It's like, okay, let's deconstruct that milk. Let me tell you what's in milk. Whey and casein. It's got the best two proteins in it, but they just don't think of it as that exciting. So I think, something like that is really good in the morning. So I might suggest that they have an egg or a hard-boiled egg. Yeah. Or, I like to give the teens some of those little recipes where you can scramble your egg in the microwave in a coffee cup and, take it with you to eat. So get some of that protein at breakfast. And then the same thing at lunch. That's another time for them to get another boost of protein. Does not have to be the expensive protein shakes. It can be, a chicken sandwich. Just 3 or 4 ounces of meat can give you all the protein that you need, which isn't a lot. So if you're eating meat, it's very easy to get that protein. If you don't eat meat, try to find a meal at lunch that has some beans and rice and maybe cheese with it, so you can get the protein that way. And then protein at dinner, but again, it doesn't have to be the huge amount because you've been eating protein throughout the day. And then I think after a really hard, strenuous workout, it's good to have a little carbohydrate protein snack. That's where I think yogurt is great. Cheese sticks with some whole grain crackers can come into play, but it doesn't have to be a lot of protein. The recommendation is like 20 to 30 grams, which is not huge amounts. Most protein powders have about 20 grams of protein in a scoop. So if you're making your own smoothie and you're adding 4 scoops of protein powder, it's just overkill. Your body can't handle all that protein at one time anyway. The other thing I always tell them is I see some of these kids who are drinking protein shakes or something like Core Power, which I think those products are great, but they'll drink 2 of those after a workout. And then I say, what are you going to do after this? Well, I'm going to go home and eat dinner. Well, you don't need them then. You don't need to drink these now because you're going to get that protein within that hour. And I always tell them, that window of anabolic opportunity is open longer than you think. A lot of them think, if I don't get protein within 10 minutes after my workout, I've wasted it. And so within an hour or 2 after a workout, you can get good quality protein, and it's going to really help feed your muscles. And then I also tell them it's nice to have a protein snack before you go to bed, kind of feed your muscles while they sleep. But again, it doesn't have to be, a 60, 70 gram dose of protein. It can be a smoothie that you can make at home with your mom or dad's blender or NutriBullet, and use some Greek yogurt and maybe blend some cottage cheese, which I think is a great protein. Kids don't like it because of the texture, but blend that up blend it up in a smoothie, and get a little bit before you go to bed.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. All great advice. And I think, yes, spreading out the protein throughout the day and using real food, it's much more enjoyable, is great advice. And protein isn't that complicated. That's the other thing. It's people make it out to be this big old deal that needs to be all this focus on it. It's like, it's not that complicated. We all of us almost naturally get what we need without even thinking about it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just a matter of spreading it out. I mean, most of the research shows that we get less than 50 grams of protein at breakfast, but we get 2/3 of it at dinner. So just trying to spread it out a little bit, I think, can really help an athlete.
Yeah, even it out. All good advice. So, Chris, what are you working on now? And I just really am hoping you'll talk about your new book, because that's what I want to hear about.
Okay. Well, it's at the other end of the life cycle. But when I was working, as I said, I always worked with sports nutrition, but my graduate work was actually in gerontology, the study of aging. And so I taught health and aging for years. And I thought, when I leave the university, I want to bring those two things together. So I was able to convince an amazing exercise scientist, Dr. Bob Murray out of Chicago, to work with me. And we have written a book called Food and Fitness After 50. And so it is, eat well, move well, and be well. And we think that it's so important for people 50, 60, 70 and beyond to realize that it is never too late to start improving your nutrition habits, to stay active and to be physically fit, and then to be well by considering how much you sleep and how you deal with stress and what kind of social support you have. Well, you probably do all those things anyway. Mm-hmm.
I love it. It's on my list of books for me because I am cresting over 50. Yeah. I am over 50. Yes. But also for my, but you know what? It's interesting over the last year, and I know we're not talking about teen athletes now, but I have a lot of parents that are listening to the show and they're in the same boat that I'm in. You know, you do start to notice the aging process. And what is most notable for me is the muscle tone. How quickly it has changed dramatically in the last year. And I'm somebody who does exercise nearly every single day. I mean, I take a day or two off here and there, but I do move and do stuff almost every day. But that is what has been remarkable to me. And I'm also very interested in this in your book for my parents. I know one of my parents has really lost a lot of muscle tone to the point where it is a health hazard, you know, falls and balance and things like that. And you really do start to think about those things when you have parents or, you know, people who are in their 70s and 80s. That's, I think, isn't that, I don't do geriatrics, you know that, but yes. One of the big reasons why there are so many falls and accidents in that age group?
Yeah, absolutely. We start losing our muscle mass by about age 40, and there's a 10 to 15% increase loss of that every decade. And we call it sarcopenia. And sarco is muscle and penia is loss of. So it's like a muscle wasting. And not only do we lose muscle mass, but we lose muscle strength and muscle function. And like you said, that functional piece is what's so important because you want to have good balance. You want to be able to walk, you know, the shuffling that you see some older people do, you know, that can all be improved with a little bit of work. It doesn't have to be a lot. But muscle is very plastic. So we can get stronger and we can improve function well into old age, but we have to work at it. We can't just lift a soup can every once in a while and think we're doing strength training. You know, it has to be progressive resistance exercise. And speaking of protein, that's the other thing. Older people need more protein. So they too need to feed their muscles. They need that protein spread throughout the day. So doing some weight training for the upper body, for the legs, you know, whether that's using exercise equipment at your gym or your Y, or just doing chair squats, you know, things you could just do at home to improve your strength. It's so very important for us. You know, I've always told people that for me, and I'm 67, for me, yeah.
Are you? No, are you kidding?
I know.
Oh, you are just a picture.
You know, for me, I want to have what I call functional fitness, and I have two goals. I want to be able to lift a 50-pound bag of dog food into my cart because I have two big dogs. And I also want to lift my suitcase in the overhead bin because I love to travel. So, you know, for me, those are very practical things that keep me wanting to be strong and keep me wanting to do weight training.
I think that's great. And I am really personally thinking about what I need to do to change because I have not been the active individual who's drawn to weight training. I'm drawn more to getting out for a 3 or 5 mile run or, you know, working up a good sweat. Yeah. But I've started doing yoga twice a week, and that's holding up your own body weight. You know, it's not easy. Hold up your own body weight.
Yes. I think yoga's fabulous for not only that, but also for that balance and agility and flexibility, which is another thing that starts to go. But yeah, I think, and parents of young athletes, I think that's one of the problems. They're so busy shepherding their children around and driving to games and away games and practices that, you know, their own fitness takes a back seat. So instead of just sitting there watching the game, you know, walk up and down the steps, you know, take some TheraBands with you and start doing some stretching, or work out with your kids, you know, set up a little home gym and start doing things. But I think it really is important.
Yes.
And it's a great stress reliever as well. As you know, exercise is one of the best stress relievers there is.
Yes, the natural psychiatrist.
I just interviewed a guy who's been running marathons his whole life, and he's had to cut back. He's 75, but, he said to me, running was just cheaper than Prozac. Yeah.
Yes, totally. I buy that too. Not Prozac. I buy into that idea. Jeez. So, Chris, where can listeners find you and find your new book and all that good stuff? Because I know a lot of people will want to track you down.
Great. Well, I have a website, and it's just my name, chrisrosenbloom.com. And on the website, we do have a page about the book. So you can read about the book. It's available through Amazon. That's the best place. There's a Kindle edition as well. So for people who prefer to read electronically. And on that website, there's a page for the book, and there's a lot of information. I also have a blog called Fit to Eat. And in that, I've been really interviewing lots of people who are 50, 60, 70 and beyond, and how they stay well or be well or move well. And so it's kind of inspiring and fun to hear from other people and get some ideas for what they do.
That's awesome. I will include all those links in the show notes so people will be able to find you and your book and your blog and all the great things you've been doing. You're such a wonderful resource to teen athletes and older athletes now. It's just wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jill. It's been great to talk to you.
Well, there you have it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Chris Rosenbloom. She is one of my little girl crushes, I guess, if you will, in the sports and sports nutrition athlete arena. I really could nerd out on talking to her about sports nutrition for a long time. So I really got a lot out of this and enjoyed chatting with Chris. Please go to her website, chrisrosenbloom.com. Check out her book for yourself. And if you're not 50 and over, think about it for your parents or your neighbor or your aunts, your uncles. I think it could be a wonderful gift for a birthday or the holidays or whatever. I think we all, as we age, need to be more and more tuned in and knowledgeable about what that process really looks like in terms of our fitness level and the foods we eat and our health and well-being. So I encourage you to check out the show notes where you will find the links to all of her resources. Don't forget, I have lots of young athlete resources on my website at jillcastle.com. Eat Like a Champion, my book, and my new e-course or my program for athletes to take and their parents to take so that they understand their personal nutritional needs is here. It is open for registration and you can go and sign on for it at any time. It's available all the time. Just go to my website, jillcastle.com/eat-like-a-champion. So /eat like a champion. You also will see many free blog posts on the topic of young athletes, a free athlete snack handout, and cookbooks for sale. So head on over, brush up on your young athlete nutrition know-how. I've got a lot of things there for you where you can do that very easily. As always, thanks for joining me today. I'm so glad you were here. Be sure to give the child in your life, especially those athletes in your life, big or small, a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.